Hello, everyone. It's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of unstable and Rivals of Ixalan spoilers. So I do not know what's going on this weekend. We had Iconic Masters release on Friday. We're dead in the middle of unstable spoilers, and Wizards is dropping Rivals of Ixalan cards. We are like on spoiler overload. It is a crazy, crazy time. So today we're talking everything. We have 3 Rivals of Ixalan cards to talk about. Then we have a ton of unstable cards to talk about, which means we better jump into it because this might be a long one. So first off, a quick word of warning about the Rivals cards. There are 3 in all. 2 of them were posted on Wizards, I believe Brazilian site, and then they later took them back down. So they did accidentally or on purpose or who knows spoil them themselves. So they're not really leaks because Wizards did release them, whether it was on purpose or not. But because they were on the Brazilian site, they were in Portuguese, I believe, which means this is an unofficial translation. Should be pretty close or maybe dead on, but this is not the official translation. We converted it to English for your viewing pleasure. Anyway, let's jump into it. Talk about the Rivals cards first off. So card number 1 from Rivals of Ixalan, Immortal Sun, 6 mana legendary enchantment, and it does a little bit of everything. First off, makes it so players can't activate loyalty abilities on planeswalkers. Then it gives you like a Howling Mind effect where you draw an extra card on the beginning of your draw step. It makes your spells 1 less to cast, makes your creatures get +1/+1. It's basically a wombo combo of Helm of Awakening, Howling Mind, and Glorious Anthem with a little bit of planeswalker stopping power thrown in. So I don't know exactly what you do with this card. It seems like a casual/commander all-star. Every single ability on this card is something you want in Commander. It's colorless, so it goes in any deck, period, no doubt about it. So I imagine that you just automatically slot Immortal Sun into every single Commander deck you possibly have in existence. Like, there's just no reason not to. And essentially any deck, if you're playing creatures, it makes them bigger. If you're playing spells, it makes them cheaper. Drawing cards, never a bad thing no matter what you're playing. So it seems like a Commander All-Star. Whether or not it can actually work in Standard, I don't know. I mean, I'll definitely try it. I love the Howling Mind effect. Making spells cheaper can be powerful. It's worth pointing out, too, that there are some really powerful planeswalkers in Standard. Chandra, pretty much a staple. Vraska seeing a lot of play. Nicole Bola still floating around. So having an answer for all planeswalkers for any color, since it's colorless, has potential to do some sneaky things. So maybe even if it doesn't start off in the main deck, maybe this is a great sideboard option for planeswalker heavy matchups. So all around, Immortal Sun, clearly a Commander All-Star. Like, the perfect Commander card. As far as seeing play anywhere else, I don't know. I've heard some vintage players talking about playing it in shops, but that doesn't mean much, because when you have lands that tap for 3 mana to cast artifacts, if it's an artifact, you at least consider it. So, we'll have to see as far as Standard or Modern or even Vintage, but for sure, Immortal Sun, Commander All-Star, no doubt about that. Next on our Rivals of Ixalan list, we have Tetzimoc Primal Death. And this is another one of the unofficial translations from the Brazilian site. But this card is super awesome. It's an Elder Dinosaur, 6 mana, you get a 6/6 with Death Touch. It has a super unique ability. You can pay a black, reveal it in your hand, and you put a prey counter on target creature. But you can only do this during your turn, so no instant speed shenanigans. And then whenever Tetzimoc Primal Death enters a battlefield, you blow up all creatures with prey counters your opponent controls. So this card is already a pretty good rate on its own. I mean, if you think about a 6/6 for 6, you're thinking Grave Titans, you're thinking Wormcoil Engines, you're thinking Soul of Innistrad, and of course, all of those cards, Grave Titan, Wormcoil, are really powerful because they come with an upside. They're not just 6/6s for 6, but Grave Titan making tokens, Wormcoil making tokens. Tetzimoc has a very different kind of upside. Instead of giving you additional bodies, it's taking bodies away from your opponent by blowing up all their creatures. So essentially, if you have this in your hand in the early parts of the game, by the time it enters a battlefield, it should just be a Plague Wind. I mean, every turn spend an extra mana that you have sitting around to put a counter counter on something, maybe multiple counters if you got nothing going on, and then you just cast your 6-mana Dinosaur, blow up all your opponent's stuff. It seems like a really easy way to win in creature matchups, and the thing I love about Tetzimoc is how good it is in the early game. Like, usually, with a 6-mana card, you're thinking, alright, well, this is going to be really powerful when I cast it, but it's not going to do anything for a bunch of turns. Tetzimoc kind of solves that problem. Yes, it's true that it doesn't do anything till you finally cast it, but in the early turns, when your opponent's playing Long Tusk Cubs and Rogue Refiners and Bristling Hydras, you can use your extra mana to start putting counters on those things, so it gives you this weird mana sink from your hand, and then when you finally cast it, you should just win the game. It is that powerful when it enters the battlefield. Blowing up everything for 6 mana and leaving behind a huge body seems super, super good. I'm not exactly sure where it fits in Standard. Black is not your typical dinosaur color, so this might be more of like a mono black control, Jund mid-range type card, but I think there is a lot of potential for Tetzimoc being very strong in Standard. 6 mana, one-sided Wrath with a huge body left behind. Not much to dislike about Tetzimoc, the new Elder Dinosaur. Our last Rivals of Ixalan card actually does have an official translation. This one was spoiled on the PAX Unplugged stream over the weekend. Storm the Vault. 4 mana, legendary enchantment, makes it so whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, you get a treasure token. Then, if you have 5 or more artifacts, transform Storm of the Vault into Vault of Ixalan, which is basically a Tolarian Academy. Taps to add a mana of any color, which is already insane, or, choice B, tap to add a blue mana for each artifact you control. So it's mana fixing for a 5-color deck, also just huge mana ramp for an artifact-based deck. Very, very potentially powerful. So if you look at this card, the front half mostly reminds me of something like Coastal Piracy. Instead of drawing a card, you're drawing a Lotus Petal, which is still pretty good. Fixes your mana, ramps you, so that's fine as is. And then the back half is basically a wombo combo of a City of Brass without any pain and damage being taken, and a Tolarian Academy, both of which are super powerful cards. It's very, very strong. It's hard to understand how broken Tolarian Academy can be if you've never played with it, but Tolarian Academy is probably at least on the short list for most powerful land ever printed. That is how busted it is, because unlike Gaia's Cradle and some of the other lands that tap to add a mana for each of something you control, artifacts are colorless, and they're cheap, so you can just flood the board and have a land that's tapping for a ton of mana. So in Modern, there's some interesting ideas for this card. I mean, we have Memnites, we have Springleaf Drums, we have Mox Opals. It should be pretty easy to transform a Storm of the Vault pretty early in the game. The question is, what are you going to do with that mana? Like, what's your mana sink? Why is tapping for 5 or 10 mana with one land actually good in your deck? If you're just playing all Memnites, you're not really getting that far ahead, so we'll have to see as far as Modern. Where I'm mostly excited about this card is in Standard, where we already have a deck that could take advantage of the mana Storm of the Vault can produce. So what I'm thinking is Ornithopters, Prophetic Prisms, Implemented Combustions, then we flip around into Vault of Ixalan, and we have Paradoxical Outcome to pick up all those cheap artifacts, Aetherflux Reservoir to get the Storm win, take advantage of all the mana we're generating. Seems like this could be the card that pushes Paradoxical Outcome, Aetherflux Reservoir decks back towards the top of the format, or maybe towards the top. I don't know if it's ever been at the top. People have messed around with them, but I'm super excited for the potential of Vault of Ixalan with Paradoxical Outcome and Aetherflux Reservoir. Otherwise, the question for Standard, much like we were talking about in Modern, is what do you do with this mana? Right now, probably the best payoffs are like Pull from Tomorrow, Star of Extinction, Torment of Hailfire, although it's worth pointing out that with Torment of Hailfire, you're going to have to be Grixis, going to be in 3 colors, so it's a little bit weird there. So there are some okay payoffs. I mean, if you're casting a Pull from Tomorrow X8 or X9 or X10 or something like that, you're going to be getting a huge amount of value, but you're going to have to be playing a lot of artifacts, so there's some weird deck building restrictions, but definitely worth keeping in mind Storm of the Vault and Vault of Ixalan, because anytime you can have a land that potentially taps for 5+ mana, it's worth keeping an eye on because it has potential to do really broken things if people can find the right build of the deck. Will we find the right build? I don't know, but there's at least a chance that this ends up being really busted. So those are are Rivals of Ixalan spoilers, and it's time to move from the world of Standard and Modern and even Vintage into the world of crazy unstableness, starting off with some more half cards. We have some more augment cards, Ninja and Half Squirrel. We've seen this mechanic before. Ninja is pretty interesting. It kind of has a ninja-esque ability. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to a player, you will get the host's ability, whichever that might be, draw a card, roll a die, etc., etc. Half Squirrel triggers whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, which seems like a pretty easy ability to hit. The problem is, it's a -1, so it's actually kind of making your host creature a little bit weaker when Ninja's at least pumping it a little bit, but it still seems like it could be pretty powerful in the right build. We also got a bunch of random uncommons over the weekend. Garbage Elemental can't be blocked by wordy creatures, which means 4 or more lines of text. So kind of an interesting mechanic, not super powerful, although it can attack for 4 thanks to the frenzy mechanic. Buzzing Wackadoo has some nice multiplayer implications where everyone is choosing words and kind of controlling the ability of it. So the outcome is going to be pretty random, but it should be a fun card to play in a multiplayer setting because of the interaction it'll generate. And then proper laboratory attire gives you protection from die rolling and +2/+1. I guess if die rolling.deck is a big thing in your meta, you might want to consider this. Otherwise, it seems like it's mostly for unstable limited since die rolling isn't a very supported mechanic outside of unsets. We also got entirely normal Armchair, which is kind of a callback to one of the most iconic cards from the original unset. So entirely normal Armchair has an ability where during your turn, if entirely normal Armchair is in your hand, you can hide it on the battlefield. So you can slip it onto the battlefield. It also has an ability where if your opponent realizes it's on the battlefield, they can make you return it to their hand, basically. 0 mana. If your opponent realizes it's there, it goes back to your hand. On the other hand, you can destroy an attacking creature if you can keep it on the battlefield without your opponent realizing it's there for just 2 mana. So this is obviously kind of a callback to Cheaty Face, the other unset card that you could sneak onto the battlefield if your opponent didn't notice. So I think it's really cool because Cheaty Face is super popular for casual play. It's just a really unique mechanic. I don't know if entirely normal Armchair is as good. You gotta sneak into play during your turn, which is a little bit more restrictive. It can't really attack or block. It's just a destroy attacking creature, but it's really cool, the flavor of the card. We also got a bunch of cards that allow you to kind of interact with players in really weird ways. So Sacrifice Play allows you to make a player from outside the game choose an attacking or blocking creature an opponent controls, and that player sacrifices a creature. So choose a person next to you, choose your friend, choose some random person walking by in the street. They get to choose the outcome. Handy Danny Clone is a really cool mechanic. So 3 mana, you get an artifact, you can pay 2, and you get a 2/2 colorless homunculus creature token, which seems like a pretty good deal. The problem is the token must be represented by a unique hand and 2 fingers at all times. So obviously, you can make one of these and use your hand to represent the token. But once you want to make a second one, and a third one, and a fourth one, you're going to have to be calling over other people to get their fingers and their hands on the token. So the end result is going to be just this huge crowd of people around you trying to represent the tokens with their fingers and unique hands on the battlefield, because if it's not represented by those fingers, it ceases to exist, so you gotta keep the hands there to have the token there. So a really cool twist on how you play Magic. Finally, Chivalrous Chevalier is kind of fun. Enters the battlefield, you can return a creature you control to its owner's hand, so get a little bounce and blink value, unless you compliment your opponent. So tell them they have nice hair, or they made a good play last turn. So kind of a fun interactive card. We also got Really Epic Punch, which is a callback to Savage Punch, except this time, instead of being punched, the bear is doing the punching of a dragon or a dinosaur or something. Works mostly the same way, except instead of ferocious, it only works with creatures with host or augment. So a cool callback to Savage Punch. We also got another contraption in Quick Stick Lick Trick, which, say that 5 times fast. Quick Stick Lick Trick. Whenever you create Quick Stick Lick Trick, target creature gets +1/+1 and gains lifelink until end of turn. Not one of the most powerful of the contraptions, but a blast to try to say. Hotfix is super unique. 6 mana, sorcery. You have 10 seconds to look at and rearrange the cards in your library. At the end of those seconds, if you're touching one or more of those cards, you gotta shuffle it up. So, super speed, tutor the card, or as many cards as you can that you want to the top of your deck, demonic tutor, setting up like multiple vampire tutors, but don't go a second too long, or else it all went for nothing. You spent 6 mana for literal nothing. X is very interesting. I expect this card to be super popular in Commander if you are allowed to play it. It's a human spy, it's a 2-mana 2/2, and it has one of the craziest abilities we've probably ever seen on a Magic card, period. As long as X is in X's owner's opponent's hand, X may cast X and activate X's abilities. That opponent can't cast X and plays with his or her hand revealed. So basically, you gotta cast X from your hand, get it on the battlefield, then you can pay blue and a black and tap it to put X in an opponent's hand, and once X is in the opponent's hand, you can cast it from their hand. Your opponent has to play with their hand revealed, and you can pay 5 mana to cast a card from your opponent's hand, the hand that X is in. So really weird and confusing, but seems really unique and really interesting. So I think this is a super sweet card. I'm a little worried that if you play this, your opponent's accidentally going to go home with your copy of X, so you might need a stockpile of backup X's for the ones that you lose by putting them in your opponent's hand. But really cool and fun. Stealing your opponent's cards is awesome. We've never had a Magic card before that actually puts itself into your opponent's hand or into your opponent's deck. So it is something that you only see in the silver bordered world. So super excited for this one. We also got Masterful Ninja, which is so sneaky. It's not even in the artwork, which is pretty awesome. It's a troll ninja, and you can reveal Masterful Ninja in your hand, and it is on the battlefield and in your hand until end of turn. So if you need a chump blocker, you can reveal your Masterful Ninja and be like, haha, I got a 1/1. It also kind of has like a shade ability where you can pump it. Really interesting card. I don't know how this will play in practice, but very sneaky and unique. Finally, we got the Sly Spy, which makes your opponent discard the wordiest card from their hand as far as names are concerned whenever it deals combat damage. So it's kind of like a Hypnotic Spectre, but instead of a random card, or instead of you choosing the card, you only get rid of the one with the longest name. So I guess it depends on what the deck is like. If your opponent's playing really powerful long name cards, Sly Spy can be really good. Otherwise, I mean, making your opponent discard a card is never a bad thing, but it'll have a really weird and interesting effect as far as a Hypnotic Spectre-esque ability is concerned. And that is our daily Unstable and Rivals of Ixalan spoilers for today. So what do you think? What do you think of these Rivals cards? How good is Immortal Sun? Are you excited for the return of Tolarian Academy? What about Tetzimoc Primal Death, the one-sided Plague Wind? Is that going to make Black Dinosaurs a thing? How about the Unstable cards? Which is your favorite from today? Do you like the blue-black ninja-y, spy-y, troll-y mechanics? How about hotfix? Are you going to set up your library? What do you think of the cards that kind of pull in players from outside the games to represent tokens with their fingers and complimenting your opponents and all that stuff? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.